Get out the insurance cards, get out the co-pays. The office is open, my friends, as this video is brought to you by drroto.com.
Oh, baby. Good morning. Good morning, my friend, to the ultra early edition of In the Cup, brought to you by drroto.com. I am Johnny Danger. With me, as always, Mr. Adam White, but not as always in his vehicle somewhere outside of a highway sign that's leading to Jackson, Michigan.
This is true. It's our National Open Danger, and what could be more American and patriotic than doing a podcast from the Bank of America parking lot overlooking an LA Fitness. Truly inspired this morning. Just drove about 40 miles to get here, and happy to be on with you. I'm also wearing a Japanese golf company's hat, which maybe isn't the most American thing in the world, but whatever. We're here. It's going to be a great week. I'm wearing a shirt that is from the state of North Carolina, where the U.S. Open's being played. That's got to count for something.
It counts. It counts in my heart. It counts in my heart. So.
Your heart.
Well, we are ready to go. Like I said, drroto.com. I saw Adam's breakdown got posted this morning, so make sure you head over there, check out his in-depth favorite picks for the week as we quickly go through the field today. Tell us about this course. I've been seeing all kinds of crazy videos on social media of people like dropping a ball in the middle of the green and it rolling all the way off into a hazard. What's going on here?
Yeah, so there are a lot of runoffs around the greens. If things get a little crispy, it could be interesting. We are at Pinehurst number 2. We have to mention that Scotty Scheffler has won yet again. He would be, I think, the third different player. This would be the fourth time since like the turn of the millennia that a player would win 2 majors and 6 events in a season. He has a chance to do that by the U.S. Open, which is pretty wild. So. Yeah, obviously Scotty's dominant. He's going to be a big talking point this week. To Scotty or not to Scotty is going to be a very big question. But Pinehurst number 2 is a very historic golf course. It's a Donald Ross design. It's known to be kind of his crown jewel. He took many, many years, decades actually, working on the course to perfect what is really, I think it's going to show what golf architecture can create instead of these bomb and gouge courses where guys can just hit it 3,000 yards and hit wedges out of the greens. It's very much about angles, about being able to stop your green or stop your ball on the green in the right section to give yourself a reasonable putt. You're going to see a lot of golf shots that roll up seemingly very close to the hole and then roll slowly off the green into the bunkers or the waste areas around the greens. It is a par 70 golf course, just over 7,500 yards. There are some holes they could potentially shorten to make drivable, such as the number 3 hole. A very short par 4. I think it's playing at 375 longest, but they might shorten that up once or twice. Probably Saturday would be a good day for it. We've seen it play 3 times here. The only one that's really relevant to me is 2014 because they made a lot of changes. The course looks completely different than when Payne Stewart won it in 99 or Michael Campbell in 2005. It is going to play difficult, but I think in a different way than last week we saw at Memorial. So I'm expecting winning score to be somewhere in like the 7 to 10 range, depending on what conditions look like. But it does appear to be pretty firm, and it's going to firm up over the weekend if they let it. You've got a lot of long par 4s, so six par 4s over 480. You're going to have a lot of players hitting long irons in the greens, even the bombers, because a lot of these fairways kind of bottleneck and get narrower beyond the 300-yard mark. So bombing is not going to be the advantage that it is most weeks. It's not going to be a leaderboard similar to Valhalla. You famously saw Martin Keimer 10 years ago putt his way from around the greens to an 8-shot victory. Pretty crazy. He was 9 deep. The closest was 1 under. With technology coming along the way that it has, I do expect the winning score to be around that mark, but a lot more players to be close to that mark. So if you're looking for the carnage of like a winged foot of years past, 5 over winning scores like Shinnecock, things like that, it's probably not going to be that. Not a lot of thick rough around these fairways. It's a lot of waste bunkers with grass, little bushes, a lot of pine straw, things like that around the fairways. I think it's going to pose an interesting test, and we have some players that are considered kind of short knockers, but specialty players with their short game and their wedges that could contend this week, where that's not the case in most majors. So to me, it's setting up as a very interesting week. I'm very curious to see if Scotty can keep up his good play, because this is a completely different test than anything he's conquered so far, despite winning 5 times. I sort of expect him to do so, but going to be a lot of intrigue this week as the week kind of progresses. So I think I have a good idea of the mixture of players that we will see contend this week. But it's the U.S. Open, so we have to embrace carnage, which will be a consistent theme throughout our breakdown here.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, we can talk briefly about Scotty from last week. We're seeing again projected probably 35 to 45%. And obviously he won last week, right? But he was 40% owned in our private league. And but he didn't make an appearance in a lineup in the top 33% of the scoring in our game. So, 40% of the people had him, and none of them finished top 40% in our contest. So it just was too hard to find value pairing with him last week that worked. Is that going to be the case this week? Or are you finding lots of value you like at the bottom?
Yeah, it was hard last week because, nobody was on Adam Hadwin. He had just missed the cut in his national championship. Didn't really see many signs that he should have contended. So that was a tough one to get on. So yeah, I think this week there are a lot more value plays in the 6K range that are viable. Mm-hmm. With that said, we've talked about popular plays under 7K. Even with more viable plays than normal in that range, I'm still looking at these guys and saying, you know what? If I can differentiate my lineups just by picking one different player up top, and therefore bringing more of these guys in the 7K range or low to mid 8K range into play, if I get 5 of 6 or even 6 of 6 through, even if Scotty does go on to win, I've still got a unique lineup that is probably going to accumulate more points than most, if not all, of the Scotty lineups do.
Fair. And, and this week, Adam, we have seen that when Scotty's up top, a lot of times there's a Rory or there's a Xander or there's somebody with him, right, up in that like 25 to 30% projected ownership. This week, it's Scotty by himself at like 40, and everybody else is hovering 15 or below. So I think you can find some variation at the top as well. If you want to avoid Scotty, it doesn't seem like everybody's piling in on anyone else. The next highest is Colin Morikawa, down at 94, but everybody else up there in the 10K or above range, I'm looking at 12 to 15%, which is kind of unique this week, that we, at least for the last several months, that we've been watching that.
Yeah, and I think you have to look at it in more ways than just we normally talk about. Scotty is like the third most likely guy, despite being the highest price to 11x his salary. But if Xander stays within striking distance on Sunday and ends up, say, 6 to 8 to 10 points behind Scotty in DraftKings points for the week, you also have a lot of players that can accumulate more points for you, such as Morikawa. It's a lot more comfortable to fit Xander and Morikawa than it is Scotty and Morikawa. And I think Morikawa is, I want to say a must or a lock. That's never the case in a U.S. Open, but he's about as close as you can get. He's very underpriced relative to the way he's been playing in majors, the way he's been playing leading up to this, his skill set relative to this course and what it asks you to do. So I'm opting this week for kind of the Xander Morikawa start, or even Morikawa, and just balancing it out from there. And I'm going to be okay with the results if Scotty goes on to win again, which there's a good chance he will. He's less than 3 to 1 to win this event, which is insane. So yeah, to your point, I think knowing that Scotty's going to gobble up most of the ownership up top, Xander has finished top 15 in like 7 consecutive U.S. Opens. So he's obviously a specialist in this event. He's been playing phenomenal golf as well. So I'm opting to go that route this week and letting the Scotty folks hopefully miss a couple cuts with some of their lower price guys.
Yeah, I'm going to play one lineup, as you know that I do. And it's going to be hard for me to get Scheffler in, to be honest, this week. I have been a must-play Scheffler guy most of the season. But we'll see. We'll see how you feel when we get below. And the reason is because, I'm seeing what I've been seeing in a lot of optimizers, what I've been seeing in a lot of early lineups that people are sharing. It's like Scotty and Decky. Like that's where it starts, right? Because you've got him down at 8,000, but his ownership's going to be like 20% at 8,000. So I feel like if you just start with two different guys in the high end 9,000s and up, that you're already different enough in our 20-person private contest. So
yeah, I would agree. I like that
all
strategy.
right.
Especially
So who
trying
else
to
do
make
you like? We like Xander. Last time we had a major, we kind of discounted Bryson, and it bit us a little bit. How do you feel about Bryson this week?
Oh, I loved Bryson at Valhalla. I think that course fit him a lot better. This week, after some deliberation, I'm going to pass on Bryson. Brooks as well just hasn't shown me enough signs. I don't think the way he normally separates himself at these longer, tougher courses like Bethpage and Oak Hill, it's not the setup that's going to favor him as much. So I'm actually going down to Hovland here. Xander, I love. We've talked about that. But I'm going down to Hovland here. I think he had a very up and down week last week, but we've seen enough signs with him contending at the PGA, playing well for the most part last week, with the exception of a couple stretches. It's a course where his short game, his lack of short game prowess around the greens isn't going to hurt him as much, because he can putt much like Martin Keimer did 10 years ago from around these greens, and maybe use a lower lofted iron, something like that, to bump and run it up there. So Hovland's a guy I'm looking at outside of Schauffele, I should say, and Morikawa up top above 9K. You've got guys like.
Do you have the guts to go full blown leverage on a guy like Cantlay or Clark, who've been not playing good, but only projected at 3% ownership?
No, absolutely not. That's just a hard no. That's a hard pass for me.
Talk about differentiating lineups. If you start with Cantlay and Clark, man, you are on an island on your own.
I don't know how Cantlay is still priced in the 9K range. Like, it's all based on what he did a year ago or more. Like, I just can't. There's no way I can do it. Wyndham has been struggling a lot.
Let's move on down. I already, teased it a little bit in the 8K range. It's Hideki is by far and away going to be the most owned player there, followed by Matty Fitz. Tommy Fleetwood has shown some flashes this year. How do you feel about this range? You know that we normally like Cam Smith. I'm a Max Homa slappy. He's way down in ownership. Is there a reason for that?
Yeah, I think Homa hasn't been showing enough coming into the week. He has generally struggled quite a bit in these more difficult majors. He did have a great finish at the Masters this year, had a chance to really put some pressure on Scotty on the stretch there. But yeah, Homa's not a guy that I'm really interested in this week. He does drive it pretty straight, which is enticing, but the form just has not been there. JT, much like Cantlay, I just don't see why he's priced so high. He's had better form, but really struggling. Cam Smith shot 80 on the weekend on Sunday last week at Live Houston, so not someone I'm interested in there. Tommy Fleetwood's been a great U.S. Open player, and I think people still remember that, but he has struggled in recent years with his popularity this week. His projections, I'm off of that. The guys that I like are actually the bottom three here in the 8K range: Matty Fitz, Tony Finau, and Hideki. I think Hideki is going to be very popular. His price for good reason. He's a phenomenal ball striker. These greens are going to firm up. You need guys that can flight it in a little bit higher, stop it quicker, and he definitely fits the bill there. And I actually love Matty Fitz this week. I love the way he finished last week. He started off hot. He was like 3 deep through his first 7 holes, and then just totally crapped the bed for about an 8-hole stretch on Thursday, which really cost him a chance to contend. But I love the way he sort of plots his way and plans his way around the golf course. I think it's going to be a sort of a tactician's week this week. And I think Matty Fitz is my favorite play here in the 8K range, followed just behind that by Matsuyama and Finau. Finau's been striking the ball really well, and his short putting stroke, his stroke looks a lot better. He's got a funky grip, but it looks a lot better than it has when that toe was way up. And he's starting to putt better. He actually gained strokes last week on the greens at Muirfield. And I don't know. I love the way his game is trending. He's got the kind of game tee to green that could sustain him round after round here at the U.S. Open at Pinehurst. So those are my 3 in the 8K range, and we'll get into the 7.
My problem with Finau, Adam, is I'm looking at his stats right now, and in 5 of his last 6 outings, he's shot like 4 over his previous rounds on Sunday.
Yeah,
like
he has
just
struggled
falling apart on Sunday.
He has struggled on Sundays. Now, last week he shot 1 over at Memorial. That was well below the scoring average, and honestly, it was the same score that I believe Scotty shot. So it's not like he sort of crap the bed there when he was almost in contention. So I'm looking at that as more of an aberration than I am a trend. I think come Sunday this week, you're going to need to be able to, hit these shots that if it firms up, that are a little higher than most of the players in the field, that land a little bit softer. And he fits that bill. His short game's also been pretty good. And I think his stroke with these faster greens, it's going to be tough to separate yourself on the greens. So I think that plays in his hands, being more of we'll call him a mediocre putter of late. It's generous.
Fair enough. All right, let's get into the 7K range. As I look through here, I'm seeing a couple of ownership pops, mostly in Sahith, some JM. Let's see, we got Benny Ann popping up in double digits here. This is where we got to make our money, though. So who's here? Are you getting back on Cam Young?
No, not back on Cam Young. Much as you've said about certain players, he is dead to me, at least for the remainder of the summer, I think. Sahith, I do like that it's a little more of I'm trying to come around on Sahith. I just think he's shown a little too much volatility lately. Very up and down, round to round. Approach play can fall apart on him. So at his projections for ownership, I'm just sort of staying away from him this week. I do like Benny On quite a bit.
I'm always on.
Yeah, I mean, we're always on. And the guy that I like that's not necessarily low owned, but I like this because it's very well balanced. So if you look at this range and you say, all right, there's going to be 6 guys, 7 guys, somewhere in that 10% neighborhood as far as ownership in tournaments. I like just kind of picking the guy who gives you higher upside, maybe differentiates you a little more. And that guy for me is Minwoo Lee. So Minwoo is a bomber, but he can also pull out his 2-iron and with run out, hit it out there close to 300 yards. So I think that's an advantage to him, whereas the driver is normally a weapon for him. When he clubs down to his 2-iron, he's often going to find himself in the fairways. He's a decent approach player, but he can really get hot, and he does play well on the big stage that this will provide him. He finished 5th last year at LACC in only his 2nd U.S. Open, so he's not going to be scared of the big stage. He's shown some good trends. He's finished top 25 in 4 consecutive events, so I do like Minwoo there as a pivot. I couldn't fault you for playing Sungjae, but God, he has just been awful in U.S. Opens in years past. You would think accurate player should have the game for it, but missed the cut last year, missed the cut in 22, T35 in 2021, but just never really contending in U.S. Opens, and he's missed 4 out of 5 cuts in majors, so that's a guy I'm staying away from.
Are we making a mistake by not looking at Shane Lowry?
Maybe. I think a lot of people are going to steer clear of him because he's had such a terrible round on Sunday. I think he shot 85 last week.
True, but I mean, I'm looking at this range, and he's at 4.5% projected ownership. That's real low.
That is a guy that he is a very accurate driver. And I'm much more interested in looking at long-term trends over an aberration of one really crappy round. So I think you're onto something there. He's definitely a great tournament play. Gives you a lot of leverage in this range. Even if you start with, say, Scotty and Morikawa, knowing those guys are going to be the most popular up top. If you did go down to Shane Lowry, and then we got a couple guys in the 6K range we'll talk about. If you went to a couple of the definitely lower projected ownership guys, that'll still give you some pretty some uniqueness in your lineups there in tournaments. So yeah, actually, it's a guy that I kind of looked at yesterday, but the more I look at it, the more I like it. I think Shane could be a great pivot play this week.
I like it. I'm gonna keep my eye on him. All right, let's get down to the 6K range. Let's see who pops out here. We got my boy Sepp Straka, who I ask you about every single week, popping up at 15% down here. But it's really hard to ignore just how good he's been. He's had 3 5th place and 8th place in the last 5 contests, and he's 6,500. Can you fade this chalk?
I mean, you can. You certainly can. There is no such thing as a free square in DFS golf, especially at a U.S. Open. But make sense of 6,500 for a guy who's finished top 10 in 4 of his last 5 events. You're
not going to be alone. You're not going to be alone.
No. And I don't
And
know
our,
the ways
our
that,
general policy is anybody over 10% in the 6K and below range, we fade.
yeah, I mean, on principle, I'm fading him just because there is a lot of volatility in a U.S. Open style venue. I mean, one errant approach shot could truly send you to a double or triple bogey with the way this course sets up. So what I'm looking at that you could poke holes in, his short game isn't great. He's not a consistent putter, but he does not shape the ball both ways on approaches. So the way that's going to hurt you at this course especially is you need to sort of work against some of the slopes, like fading it into an uphill right to left, back right to front left slope. If he has a pin on the right-hand side with a longer iron in his hand, are you going to start the ball over a bunker or a waste area and curve it back towards the hole? You're not taking that risk. So he could very well struggle and get frustrated with some of what these approach shots ask you to do. And because it's such a different test than anything they've played really on the PGA Tour all year, these top tens are not really holding as much weight for me as it would going into like Valhalla, for example, because it's much more of a PGA Tour-esque course. The USGA is a different animal, and Pinehurst is different than any course that they play in the US Open Rota. So, yeah, those are the holes I can poke in it. We've talked about under 7K guys being this highly
and there's
owned.
two other guys I want to talk to you about that are also at 15% basically, and that's Russell Henley right at the top at 69, and Christian Bezuidenhout at 62, both in the 15% range. And then kind of a shocker to me, maybe you can shed some light at it, 6,800, projected over 11% ownership. Somebody, I don't even know who they are, man. Dean Burmester.
You don't know Mean Dean?
I don't know Mean Dean, bro.
Mean Dean had a great finish at the PGA. So he was like on the fringe of contending going into Sunday. Ended up finishing 12th, but he's won a live event this year in Miami. He's had a couple other top five, or at least one top five throughout the year. I think two more. He's a long hitter. He's pretty swole, as the kids say. Hits it a long way. Like I said, I don't know. I can't get on him at 11%. I don't think you know enough about his game from these live events to say he's a good course fit for this, to see him at double digit ownership. And the one that really looks difficult for me to fade is Russell Henley. He's so solid across the board. He's like Xander Schauffele light. Like doesn't have any true weaknesses in his game. He's got a very good short game. He's a good putter. His approach play is good. The fairways are going to be firm, so he's going to have shorter approaches into the greens. I don't know. Russ is probably the guy that I can't totally fade out of this under 7K group. Bezuidenhout, I have a pretty easy pivot for you. You're going to love this, Danger.
I hope so.
Take a guess who it is down here in the low 6K range.
Oh, let me look. Let me get it. Dun, 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 dun. I don't know. Nothing pops out of me that I love. It better not be Victor Perez. If you say Victor Perez, I'm going to throw something through the computer.
It's Victor. It's Victor, buddy.
Oh,
come on, man. I mean, look, his approach play has been trending very strongly. His last 3 events, he's averaging about a stroke and a quarter on approach gain per round on the field. And keep in mind, the Memorial was a signature event. The Canadian Open wasn't a signature event, but you had some good players up towards the top. He's really hitting some solid approach shots. Now, off the tee scares me a little bit, but the fairways aren't super narrow for a U.S. Open, and he's a great putter. So, and he's tall. He looks a lot like Martin Keimer, who won here 10 years ago. So there's my analytics for you. He looks a lot like the guy who won 10 years ago.
Gross. All right, some of my favorite names are in this range. Austin Eckroat, JT Poston, Harry English sometimes shows up for big events. What do you got with those guys?
He does. Poston's a guy that he's a North Carolina boy, went to East Carolina. He does putt really, really well. I could see Poston being a very, very good pivot play here. The more I've looked at it, the more I'm sort of liking the Postman this week. You're going to see some guys that maybe aren't household names for most that pop up on the leaderboard this week. And I think Poston could be one of those guys. So if I'm looking at pivots here in the 6K range, I also love Aaron Rye. So Aaron Rye, I think, is my favorite play in the 6K range. With this course, really asking you to plan your way around, like we talked about Matt Fitz being able to do, playing the proper angles. I think it plays right into his hands. He's very consistent across the board in all areas besides putting. And with the greens being challenging, with him being a veteran, I think even though he wears 2 black gloves, which is weird, it'll help in the humidity. But I think he's a player that has a chance to find himself on the leaderboard well into the weekend this week.
Fair enough. How about a Polish top 15 making machine on the Live Tour, Adrian Meronk?
Yeah, Meronk burned me pretty badly at the PGA. I'm not going to hold that against him this week. He did play very well in Houston. Not a guy that I'm going to go on. Like, he just doesn't have any history of playing well in these more difficult challenges.
I'm looking at all of his finishes this year, and his worst finish on the Live was 26th, and his 2 PGA performances, he missed the cut both times.
Yeah, that's the thing. I just got to see him do it in decent competition before I jump on a guy like that. So yeah, Meronk is not for me. If you want to take that risk, I mean, go for it, but not my guy.
All right. Well, I know you have to go, and we got to keep moving. So anything just poking out at you in the 5K range, I can't go a tournament without talking about S.H. Kim if he's in the field.
Yeah, not a guy that I've even really given any thought to be honest with you. I got a couple names for you down here. So Svensson, I think, is a solid bet to make the cut. Made the cut last year in his first U.S. Open. Mac Meissner, we have talked about in the past. It's a lot of fairways, a lot of greens. Struggled last week, but he is a solid bet.
That's wrong, Mac.
Which Mac do you like?
No, when we spoke about how much we love Mac Meissner, Bobby Mac instead went on.
Bobby Mac. There was another Mac I don't remember, but yeah, you're right. I do also have a little bit of love for the big rig Harry Higgs. He's won twice in the Korn Ferry Tour recently. Also birdied his first 2 holes of I think it was a 7-for-1 playoff at his sectional U.S. Open qualifier. So some big Mo riding for the big rig there. But that's really all I got down here.
How about your top finishing amateur prediction?
I would go with Gordon Sargent. I mean, he is an absolute bomber of the golf ball. I think Stuart Hagsted's the other one that has a chance, a longtime mid-am player that hits it pretty straight, could pop up a little bit. But yeah, I would have to go with Gordon Sargent. Absolutely bombs the ball. He could use that skill set to at least make the cut.
I like it. Let's see. Do I have any questions down here? Can I get back on Adam Schenk, who won me some money earlier this year? He's not going to make the cut for me?
No, don't do it.
Okay. Brandon Wu? You love Brandon Wu.
I don't love Brandon Wu. We've talked about him here and there, but I don't love him.
He's projected at 0.0% ownership.
Yeah, no. I'll just shout out Willie Mack and Otto Black, two Michigan boys. Gotta shout out the mitten. Got my golf glove on. Yeah, they're both playing this week. Very excited to see what they do. If they make the cut, there will be partying happening in the state of Michigan.
That's true. There will be. All right, I got nothing else for you, sir. Shall we play the game of if it ain't Scotty, who is it at the top for you?
Yeah, for me, it's Xander. Pretty simple. Best player outside of Scotty all year long. Very consistent. Has finished top 15, 7 straight years in this event. Really rises to the occasion here. And if last week was a tune-up, he played terrible by his standards. Still finished top 10. So Xander's my dude.
All right. I'm going with Colin Morikawa, who stared down Scheffler and almost holed out that last chip for the win.
You were rooting for it. I love Colin this week too. I can't fault you.
I mean, it wouldn't have changed the leaderboard in our contest, but it would have, jumped me 10, 11 points, and that's good for our overall. So, I was rooting for him. All right, let's get to the mid-range here. I think, for me, I don't know, man. I just love Tony Finau. I'm gonna go with Tony. I'm going with Tony.
Yeah,
Hey, Tony.
I can't fault you for that. I'm going to go $100 more expensive and go right to Mr. Matty Fitz. I think his game fits this course very well.
I see what you did there.
FITS, FITZ. I think, I think he'll be able to keep his head in the game, string together some birdies, give you a couple of 3 consecutive birdie streaks this week, and end up finishing top 10 at the end of the week.
I like it. All right, who you got in a value play? Let's call that low 7,000s to 6,000s.
Yeah, for me, I don't think he has the upside to finish top 5 necessarily, but I love Aaron Rye this week to just plot his way around, still just be lingering there on Sunday, and to kind of be that guy who you're like, how did he finish top 10? I didn't even notice he was up there. So that's my dude.
All right, I'm going to go right there at the same price and just keep beating the JT Poston drum until he does it for me. Yeah, I like it.
That.
All right, if we're going to get tipsy, do you got anybody you like tipsy? I'm not going to lie, man. I don't think I'm going to go below JT Poston, so I'm going to pass on an ultra value this week.
I'll go Harry Higgs, Cinderella story, big fella. Right. Sponsored by Dude Wipes. Gotta love that.
Absolutely love it. I expect you, sir, at Adam Golf A2 to drop some Twitter picks for your best bets before the tournament starts. How about that?
Okay. I will do that.
I like it. Well, you, sir, have a nice round of teaching and then whatever else you're going to do today. And I'm going to go, do my job.
All right, brother. Sounds good.
All right. Appreciate y'all. Don't forget to check out drroto.com. If you're asking yourselves, where are these guys getting these stats from? It is typically coming from datagolf.com and paydirtdfs.com. That's where we pull our golf stats from. We love those guys over there, so pay them a quick visit if you want to know where we're pulling our numbers from. On behalf of drroto.com, make sure you head over and check out Adam's article, all the baseball content, all the preseason football stuff. It's all going around, so get out there, check it out. See you guys.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drroto.com. And until the next visit, be well and take care.